how much do you think your prior engagements during your career helped you prepare mentally as well as physically
I
compared
am,
to some of
first of
your
all,
younger people? Sorry.
first of all, I'm a loner, but I'm never lonely.
Mm,
I'm a leader. And I know that about myself. I know that when I was 5 years old, the kids in the neighborhood would say, "We don't want to play with you anymore. You're too bossy." And I was only 5. And so I knew that I was born to lead, and I knew that sometimes it pissed people off and they didn't like that. But I was only 5 and I learned that message. But at the same time, when I was 5 years old, I'll show you a real quick picture of me when I was 5. Do you see that?
wow. Yes.
That's mom, and I have this picture here normally for another reason when I talk about my mom. But so that little girl right there was Mary Poppins in the kindergarten play. Now there were many different classrooms, right, for kindergarten. There were 2 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon, I remember. And I had my teacher's name was Mrs. Bailey, and she had the piano, and I sat right behind her on what we would call our sit-a-pons, which were like little mini cushions. And I sat right behind her and I knew every song and I belted them out and I just loved it. So I was chosen to be Mary Poppins. Well, that was a big deal for a 5-year-old. But the bigger deal, Wayne, was this. I think it was after I got done singing Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious and I got a standing ovation, I was hooked. I was like, I really like this stage thing. I think I could do this for a lifetime. Yeah, give me a microphone. I'm good. And that's really kind of how it started. I was a I was a vivacious child, a gregarious child. Apparently, I was quick as a whip and really, smart and fun and funny, and that's kind of where that all started. So, the leadership role. So basically, if you will, I was leading the play at five
Mm.
years old, and I was leading these kids, in the neighborhood when we would play house, and somebody would be the mom, and somebody would be the dad, and I always loved to iron, all the things, and they didn't want to play with me because I'd say you do this and you do that. Anyway, I don't do that as much anymore because I learned my lesson. But
Hello and welcome, team, to this week's ET project. Today, we're going to welcome a true global icon and trailblazer, I want to say, Dame Clarissa Burt, whose extraordinary career spans, gosh, modeling, acting, producing, what else? Writing, entrepreneurship, and there's another dozen things I haven't included there. Um, Clarissa is an internationally acclaimed media personality. For those who have children, perhaps, and ever watched The Never Ending Story, I think number 2, right?
number 2, yeah.
Clarissa was the evil sorceress. So we'll talk
I
about
call
that.
I call her the mean queen.
A mean queen, there we go. So she's an advocate for women's empowerment and has inspired, I want to say, millions of people around the world, gracing the covers of Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, and founding transformative ventures such as In the Limelight, which is one of your um, productions, Clarissa. So we'll talk about all of these things as we go through our conversation today. One of the things we do want to touch on is the Self-Esteem Regime, which is a book you released, I think, gosh, several years back now.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and it really embodies resilience, innovation, as well as purpose-driven leadership back to our audience. So
Yeah.
you live in Arizona. Well, first of all, welcome to the show,
Thank
Clarissa.
you. Thank you so much. It's
I
been a
could go
long
on
time
forever.
coming, this appointment, you and I. I had to put it off for reasons of oral surgery. You might hear I have a little difficulty still, but I'm here. I'm much better.
Yeah, well, it's really a privilege to have you with us. And, you've done so many things. I'm not sure we'll get through everything today, but we'll do our best.
All right. Well, we'll
You're,
do our
you're sitting,
best.
you're sitting in Sedona in Arizona, if I'm correct.
I'm in Phoenix, in Arizona. I'm about an hour
Oh,
away from Sedona, but I get there frequently. Yeah. I
oh,
mean,
okay.
the new age capital of the United States, one of the most beautiful places on the planet.
Yeah. Is there a purpose for choosing that location? I mean, you've traveled and worked all around the world, but Why Arizona? Any reason?
Well, I was born in Philadelphia, graduated high school in New Jersey, and
Yeah.
while I was living in Europe for 30 years, the family that was on the East Coast moved out here. And so when I decided after 30 years to leave Italy, on very good terms, but it was time to come home, my family was here. So I said, okay, if I'm coming home, I'm coming all the way home. And I've been calling Phoenix my home now since well, I bought that in 1996, but really 2005.
Wow. Incredible.
Yeah.
And throughout your career, supermodel. I have to start with that. I'm very flattered to be talking to a supermodel. So,
It was quite a while ago, Wayne, quite a while ago.
an actress, as I've already mentioned, but not only in the Never-Ending Story. You've been in movies for a long time, right?
Yeah. A lot of
Yeah,
Italian movies when I was living in Italy. The Never-Ending Story was the only one that really went worldwide. It was a Warner Brothers worldwide release and not in 1990.
okay, incredible. We're talking, 3 decades ago, and here we are, and you still look as
Oh, thank
immaculate and fantastic as you did back then. But you've done so many things. Correspondent, I believe, for one of the Olympics,
you.
1996.
Yeah,
Um,
1996 in Atlanta. I was in I think it was called, what is it, Centennial Park? I forget what it was called. The park
right.
where the bomb went off.
Yeah.
And so I was there with the Italian the Rye one team. We were all there and had left not 10 minutes before
Wow.
that bomb went off, and we got really lucky. Yeah.
Incredible for sure.
Yeah.
You're also the winner of a Celebrity Survivor. So most people probably know the American version of Survivor. I think there's also the Italian
Yeah.
franchise or the Italian version. And
Italian.
yeah, you managed to win Celebrity Survivor. Congratulations.
Well,
How did
thank you.
you do that?
That was an interesting go. Maybe for another day, but again, leadership skills just meaning, know the terrain, know how to navigate it, even if it's new. We were living on an island, which meant we were on the island's rhythm. It wasn't on ours. So up when the sun was up, down when the sun went down, because there was no electricity, no lamps. No, we had one flashlight between 20 of us. And learning how to cope with the elements was very difficult. It was horribly, tropical. A lot of tropical rain fell on our heads. I mean, it was brutal from a physical standpoint. I lost 20 pounds on the island in 3 months, which was great. But just knowing how to navigate all that, staying really, really strong. Knowing, I think the one thing that really kept me together was knowing that it would end. I wasn't there forever. This wasn't my life for the rest of whatever, but it was a really good learning, teaching moment and learning moment at the same time because I was one of the elders, which meant I was in a leadership role for the kids that were really scared. And so, notwithstanding the fact that maybe my days were, I could be a little iffy about, how the day was going, I still had to be strong for them. So I think that was a really good point about leadership is, you may feel sometimes the imposter syndrome coming on, right?
Right, right.
And
I'm sure. Yeah.
just navigating your way through that, just pulling on your strength, knowing that it's always there, trusting in yourself. We call it self-confidence, and confidere in Italian comes from Latin. It means with trust. So when we
Mm,
talk about self-confidence, it means trust in self. So that's because pulling on your self-confidence, trusting in yourself, and knowing that at the end of the day, you know that you can always trust. You really, I mean, very rarely do we ever let ourselves down,
right.
right? Because we always, as leaders, we're always looking for the way out, a
Mhm.
way in, a way out, a way around, a way, one way or the other, we will find it.
Mm. So it's very, very, I can imagine, at least I've never been in that situation, but I can imagine it's really looking inwardly, but also understanding how to navigate that social connection
Yeah.
with the other people.
Yeah, very difficult. I will say not the easiest because again, as the elder, you're dealing with younger, some of the younger kids.
Mm,
And the other thing that I will remember is that There were two other things I can bring up, I think, that would be of maybe of use. I am terrified of crabs. Anything that's a crustacean family, crabs, scorpions, lobsters, they're just not my gig. It's not my vibe.
Mm.
Let's just put it that way. They terrify me. And we were on a tropical island, which was in Nicaragua, and it's a lone island. There's nothing there. So when the tropical rains would come out, all of the crabs would come out of the mangroves from around the island.
Wow.
And so yeah, and so the island would be overrun with these crabs, and some of them are as big as, I mean, the arms are as big, as long as yours are, and they're huge. And that was a little bit hard for me. I had to really, really reel it in, if you will, for I keep myself as calm as I possibly could. The difficulty more than anything is that we were sleeping on the ground,
Yes.
right? We were sleeping on the actual ground. And so on the sand, I mean, we had a little towel down or something, but in the sand, what they call the no-see-ums or sand mites would come up. And so that had my body ablaze. I mean, they would come and they would bite me, and my physically, I was in grand difficulty.
Mm.
Emotionally, I was in difficulty because of the crabs. And I had to sort of at a certain point come to grips with the fact that some of the smaller crabs might be climbing over me at night. And they did. So you really learn how to reassess, if you will, that fear, right? And say, okay, at least it wasn't one of the huge ones. It was some of the babier ones. And so maybe that's not so bad, because what were the worst case? Well, the worst case scenario would have been of these gigantic, So you sort of, you learn how to, when given the chance, the possibility, the opportunity, or you're confronted with one of your greatest fears, you can work yourself out of out of that as well. And it was really important for me to do that for myself, and for not because you don't want to be looking like you don't want to be looking weak in front of the others, let's put it that way.
And all the while, this is being filmed for TV, right? So
Yeah, 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 I mean, yeah.
there's that pressure as well. But I'm sure there were people that didn't cope as well as it seems you did. And did you, as you said, you were the one of the seniors there, the elder
Yeah,
people. How do you console somebody in that moment? Because I know as a leader, we come across this on a regular
right.
occurrence as well.
Well,
And then,
the kids were calling me Aunt. So I was Aunt Clarissa, right? So that made me all immediately. I was an elder. Immediately I was to put, they, not because I had asked for it, but just because the age, the age that you are, and the position that they're putting you in. So immediately that these kids are looking up to you, not maybe up to you and looking to you for guidance and for a hug, for kind
mm,
words, for whatever it
mm,
might be. And so, notwithstanding the fact that, maybe you're having an uncomfortable moment or a difficult day, it's not about you at that point. When you're a leader and you're in that position, it really isn't about you anymore. It becomes about the team and what you can do to make their day a better day. In that instance,
mm.
obviously, we're talking about corporate. You're a leader, and you want to be able to give your team all of the tools that they need to make it through their day, their week, their month, their year. And so, I think as leaders, we also have to, come prepared. We have to come, what I call, the tools in the shed, all those resources that we need. And I think one of the most important resources is we're here to talk about personal development and, continually doing the work. I say I think it's everybody's sacred duty to be working on their personal development and their
Right.
self-improvement, but especially in leadership roles, whether you're the leader of a family, you're the leader of yourself, you're the leader of, the local Boy Scouts, or you're the leader of you're the CEO of, a global corporate organization. I think that, the rules are always the same, right? So there you go.
Any other traits that you see from a leader's perspective that showed up during that challenge?
Um, knowing when to, I think knowing when to take a mental break
Mm.
is really important. And that may not be when you need it or you want it, but you know that you got to get that on the to-do list pretty soon. And so I would take a walk and go all the way down the end of the island, and leave the group back at, base camp. And this is where I would be able to, just go down, sit on a rock, take a look out over, the ocean, and pull myself together. And it's really a great time also for pondering and for wondering
Mhm.
and for the thinking that you need to do when you're in those kinds of in that kind of a situation to regroup. Okay, what would make sense, what doesn't make sense, what am I going to do now and what can I do tomorrow kind of thing.
Right. Right.
While always pulling yourself back into your happy place so that you're the best leader you can possibly be. So I think that is it's a self-care moment.
Mm.
And I think that, and it's not for just women, obviously. This is for guys too, right? Men also need
Sure.
the same kind of decompression
Mm.
moment. Right? So I think that's extremely important.
Yeah. Like this is what year was this roughly?
2010.
2010. Okay, so this is 30 years into your career. How much do you think your prior engagements during your career helped you prepare mentally as well as physically
I
compared
am,
to some of
first of
the
all,
younger people? Sorry.
I'm a loner, but I'm never lonely.
Mm.
I'm a leader. And I know that about myself. I know that when I was 5 years old, the kids in the neighborhood say, "We don't want to play with you anymore. You're too bossy." And I was only 5. And so I knew that I was born to lead, and I knew that sometimes it pissed people off and they didn't like that. But I was only 5 and I learned that message. But at the same time, when I was 5 years old, I'll show you a real quick picture of me when I was 5. Do you see that?
Wow. Yes.
That's mom, and I have this picture here normally for another reason when I talk about my mom. But so that little girl right there was Mary Poppins in the kindergarten play. Now there were many different classrooms, right, for kindergarten. There were 2 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon, I remember. And I had my teacher's name was Mrs. Bailey, and she had the piano, and I sat right behind her on what we would call our sit-upons, which were like little mini cushions. And I sat right behind her and I knew every song and I belted them out and I just loved it. So I was chosen to be Mary Poppins. Well, that was a big deal for a 5-year-old. But the bigger deal, Wayne, was this. I think it was after I got done singing Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious and I got a standing ovation, I was hooked. I was like, I really like this stage thing. I think I could do this for a lifetime. Yeah, give me a microphone. I'm good. And that's really kind of how it started. I was a I was a vivacious child, a gregarious child. Apparently, I was quick as a whip and really, smart and fun and funny, and that's kind of where that all started. So, the leadership role. So basically, if you will, I was leading the play at five
Mm.
years old, and I was leading these kids, on the in the neighborhood when we would play house, and somebody would be the mom, and somebody would be the dad, and I always loved to iron, all the things, and they didn't want to play with me because I'd say you do this and you do that. Anyway, I don't do that as much anymore because I learned my lesson, but.
How did you, as you pivot between different areas in your career, modeling through to acting to producing, and then
Yeah.
becoming the entrepreneur, what was the prompt to make those transitions? Was there a memorable moment that you said, okay, I've had enough now in the modeling.
Yep.
Let's go back to
Yes.
my 5-year old acting.
Yeah, when it's not fun anymore.
Ah, okay.
When it wasn't fun anymore. When I wanted to do it so bad I could taste it, but I did it. And I did it for years and I aced it because there are a few things I did real well at. And other thing, if you asked me to balance a checkbook, I might have some difficulty. I am not left-brained at all. But right-brained, my creative was pretty strong. So when it wasn't fun anymore, and when after the modeling years, I wanted television and movies. And so I went and I did that. And I, did very, very well with that. And then I said, okay, don't, I'm getting a little bored of this. I want to produce. So I started, I was doing 3-hour live broadcasts in prime time for Italian television with the Miss Universe pageant. So there I had, my last production, I had 100 girls, 100 press, and 2,000 people sitting in water in front of a castle in Calabria. These were my mega, productions. So, and then I aced that and I went, you know what? I'm good. I'm ready to go home. I want to go back to the States. And that's where I did a couple of different things. It took a lot of time off because I could, and I had worked really hard. I started working when I was 10 as a
Right.
babysitter. So I took a little time off. And then after I turned 60, that's when I said I want to start in the Limelight Media, which was a television podcast and a digital magazine for entrepreneurial women so that they could, promote their own businesses.
Mm.
And and so yeah, I mean, there was just always a moment where, you feel you kind of you're hitting a wall and you're a little more sluggish and you're not as motivated. It's not as fun. Next, that's your next moment. And
Mm.
sometimes the transition, it didn't always happen overnight, Wayne. A couple of my transitions took a year, 2 years.
And
Yeah.
each transition, my experience, at least, Clarissa, each transition has a degree of risk. How do you calculate or deal with that? Do you throw caution to the wind and back yourself,
Yes. Yeah,
or
because
does it?
I think risk is the motivator.
Right.
I
Okay.
do believe that risk is the motivator, and there have been some terrifyingly scary moments in my life. I'm a woman that I there was no family that I could turn back to.
Mm.
There's nobody who was going to really take care of me in any way. No rich daddy. There was no husband ever. That I got married and I say, well, listen, if at least I have that little cushion, if you will, if
Yeah.
my in my transition period, I know I'll still have a roof over my head kind of thing. That none of that. It was always the absolute again, the self-confidence, if you will,
Right.
sometimes that doesn't necessarily show up. Because in the book, I talk about the daily demons, those demons that come along and they're always the naysayers and they've got something to
Mm.
say and they're going to make sure that you second guess yourself, right? So, I write about the daily demons in my book, and the conquering of the daily demons, and it's kind of like, not today, Satan, go away, it doesn't work anymore. It used to work on me, it doesn't work anymore. So it's a lot of mind set.
Yes.
And some of the I think one of the most important, funnily enough, one of the most important exercises in the book that kind of helps with that. And it's going to look weird, it's going to sound weird, it's going to feel weird, and people are going to go, "You really do that?" But it started with Louise Hayes. That's at least where I learned of it first. And then Jack Canfield, who's the other half of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. I've met both of them, by the way. Actually, Mark Victor Hansen lives a half an hour from me here in Phoenix, and Jack, I think, is still out in California.
Yes.
Um, but it's mirror therapy, what you call mirror therapy. And that's when you go and you give yourself that rah-rah session pep talk in the mirror. And some
Right.
people have a very difficult time doing that. So that is one of the things that, of course, again, you might want to do it when no one else is home. You start with 1 minute because 5 minutes might seem overwhelming to look at yourself and tell yourself how amazing you are. Because
Mm.
a lot of people don't believe that they are. And so, you start slow. You start with the two things. And then at the end of those 21 days, when your game gets stronger and you do that for 21 days, you call me and let me know how you're doing, because I guarantee you're going to be doing amazing.
Right.
You
I
know,
can imagine it would be extremely useful around the degree of pressure and public scrutiny that you must have incurred during your career. I mean, you were in the limelight the whole time.
that's why I
So,
call my business in the limelight.
how did you deal with the pressure? Was that one of the outlets for you to
I think you learn very early on, especially in modeling. There's a lot of, some people loved you, some people didn't love you. There was always a lot of life is full of rejection, if you will. I mean,
Mm.
you're rejected right and left, but especially in the career that I chose. So modeling, acting, a production, it's not easy. It's not steady work, right? So, yeah, there was quite a bit of that. I think you just as you go and you learn from especially the reading material that I was taking in, and I'll get back to that in a second. The reading
Yeah.
material, the tools that I was putting in the shed for the moments in life that were going to be uncomfortable, to say the
Right.
least, were the ones that I pulled on when I was feeling uncomfortable. I think I might have told you when we had a pre-show is that we were kids, here in the United States at least, we had three bookstores. It was Walden Books, Borders Books, and Barnes and Noble. There were no computers. We didn't have cell phones, none of the internet, none of that. But we did have
Mm.
bookstores, and I would go into the bookstores, and in the very back there'd be a little section, and it was called self-help.
Right.
And boy, did I say, well, I needed direction, I needed assistance, guidance, support, a way in, a way out, the reason why, what I needed. I wasn't getting that at home. And by the way, when I was a kid, there really wasn't very much talk of self-improvement and personal development. It really wasn't a thing yet, I don't think.
Yes.
I mean, if you were to follow down, Napoleon Hill, the Edgar Caseys of the world, if you were getting deeper into psychology, you might have heard of it, but it
Right.
wasn't as mainstream as it is today. So those books and on those shelves, Wayne, there might have been 40, 50 books. Not a whole lot, but it was something at least.
Yeah.
Today, the only bookstore that we have still standing in the United States is Barnes and Noble.
Mm.
And you can now walk rows upon rows upon rows upon rows of what they now call the personal development section.
Yeah.
And now it's $1 billion industry,
Right.
which goes back to the point, right, that we are all always looking for guidance, support, assistance, a way in, a way out, the reason why, all the things, right? Because life will trigger. Life, we know one thing for sure. There's going to be life, and then there might be death that come along in in your existence, your family members, what then you could have divorce, separation, you could have betrayal, it could be at work. Things are, it just is, it's the way things usually go. So the
Mm.
triggering point, when I talk about standing strong in your stead, just like a well-rooted tree.
Okay.
So that when
Have
you
you?
are, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to. You're talking about the posture and making sure that you're well grounded. Uh, Amy Cuddy, I think from memory, with the power pose and
Yes.
giving yourself that positive energy through that type of thing. I
Tony
guess that's a
Robbins
great.
does a lot of that too. Tony
Oh,
Robbins
for
does,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
But the idea
Well,
is just that, when the storm comes through, right?
yeah.
Here comes the tornado, the hurricane. As a well-rooted tree, you may lose a leaf or two, or possibly even a branch, but you're not going to be uprooted and transported away with the storm. And that's
Mm.
why I talk about having the tools in the shed
Right.
that you need, because be ready. At least be mindful that things could change on a moment's notice.
Yeah, for sure. And it's great advice. I mean, it does happen all the time to everybody throughout your life. So one of the reasons that self-help has become so prevalent in our world. I think it's a great segue into the book. So let's jump deeper into the book. I mean, you have a four pillars philosophy
Yeah.
um, in life and around self-esteem. Would you mind sharing and stepping us through that, please?
Absolutely. So the self-esteem regime, the regime is an organized way of doing things. So the book for me is a manual, it's a mission, and it's a movement. I really would
Mm.
love to have people understand the importance of having happy, healthy self-esteem, because it's that important. People with low self-esteem, they suffer more depression. They're usually unhappy at work, unhappy with their appearance. There's so many different variables about, what having low self-esteem entails. But the book is broken down into 12 chapters, easy to
Mm.
read. Everything you need is every chapter is its own microcosm. So we start with release, which is a
Yeah.
huge one. And that's where we're really letting go of the things that aren't working anymore. You got to make a list, and I walk you through all the steps. We've got Clarissa's Corner. We've got the Clarion Call in there. We've got exercises. We've got case studies. Every chapter is really very robust.
Mm.
Short chapters. Short chapters, because again, you're not going to read about self-esteem, you're going to do the self-esteem. That's what I love
Yep.
about the book. The second chapter is rebuild. So now you get to build, write it all down. What is the kind of life you want to be living? Not what your mom said, not what your dad said, not what your boss said, not what your pastor said. Like, what's the life you want to be living? As long as you're not hurting anybody, where's the life you want to live, right? And so then the third chapter is responsibility. It's
Responsibility.
no, yeah, responsibility. Thank you. Is responsibility. So where are you shirking it? Where are you, taking responsibility for your life? Where do you really need to be stepping into your power, your place, your space, and not letting things fall through the cracks, right? Because a lot of times a procrastination for us is what will do us in. And
Right.
that's really, procrastination is just really another name for fear. People think it's laziness. It's not.
Mm.
It's procrastination is really is an unknowing. It's really not knowing what you want to do, where you want to go, or why you want to go there. Because once you got a fire lit,
Yeah.
under your butt, and you know all those things, there is no procrastinating, right? So yeah.
Yeah.
That's the book. The book is, and it ends with reciprocal, which was always a difficult thing for me in my life. I remember we were in a group session with at work.
Right.
We're at Jewish Universe, and I said something about having. I feel like I'm doing it all. And somebody, I think it was my assistant or my secretary, said, "Well, Clarissa, you don't understand. It's so hard to do anything for you because you do it all." Okay. Okay, so that was a big life lesson. It was like, okay, I got it. I got the message, and so I let go a little bit of that. In other
Mm.
words, I allowed myself to receive as opposed to always giving, right?
Right.
And so yeah, and that was a learning moment for me because I am, a type A personality. I am the giver. I am the caregiver. I am the doer. I am, because I've always been convinced, and this is another thing as a leader I had to really be careful with is, if I want it done right, I have to do it.
Mm.
And that's one that I think is, that leaders really do need to be mindful of. And that was also a teaching leadership moment for me when they said that, and they said, you
Right.
you do it all. And oh, okay, got it.
It's interesting because, excuse me, listening to you say that, I can see the 5-year-old Clarissa coming back out,
Mary
right? So
Poppins,
the Mary
the 5-year-old
Poppins,
Mary Poppins.
the, the,
Yeah,
the bossy 5-year-old, and not to say that being bossy is the same thing, but it sort of has that roots as well, right? So,
yeah, 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 for sure. So
so
there you go.
you talk about look good, feel good, be good, and the greater good.
Feel good, fear good, be good, and greater good. Those are the four pillars. Yeah. So
Yeah.
look, we all know what that means. When we get up, and it's what I call preening. All right. So we preen. We,
Hmm.
we do the thing, and we have a little to in our step. We look in the mirror, and we say, looking pretty good today. I love that outfit. All the things that we tell ourselves before we walk out of the door. And it's not superficial. It's just it's pride in self.
Yeah.
Um, Feel good, diet, exercise, nutrition, and wellness, really important stuff. And knowing what that means
Mm.
for you and for your body. And keeping up on your health, because especially for, those of us that are starting to age up a little bit, stuff starts to creak. And we've got to be a little bit more mindful of how we're treating our bodies and see to it. Look good, feel good, be good, be good. Finances, relationship, business, all the things that keep our lives running, right? And
Right.
so just being, what does that mean? Does it mean reading another book? Does it mean taking another course? I mean, there are plenty of things we can do online. I don't know if you have Udemy. You probably have Udemy there in where you are.
Yeah.
At
Yeah.
Udemy, Coursera, Linda, all the different places that we can go and take courses
Mm.
that I absolutely love. I mean, I'm taking a course every 2 minutes. I'm learning something else, especially now that we're coming up on this whole era of AI, which is
Yes.
changing everything, and things are moving so at warp speed now. So keeping up on that has been challenging because there's so much to it, and it's all so new, right?
Right.
And then greater good is, is volunteering, tithing, paying it back, paying it forward, and just doing all around the right thing. And sometimes people say, geez, I really don't have a lot of money to be. Sometimes it's a smile. Sometimes it's holding an elevator door open for someone. Sometimes it's a compliment. It
Mm.
doesn't have to be broad stroke. It doesn't have to be a grand gesture. It can be something as simple as that that can help somebody, it can really make or break somebody's day. Just a nice, gee, that top looks really nice. I do it on the supermarket. I know I do this. Oh, that looks so nice on you. I've never seen the woman before in my life and I'll never see her again, But it makes me kind of feel good to do it. And I know she felt very, she felt good about it. So it's a win-win costs
Mm,
nobody anything. And, I think the message there is, can we just please be kind? Can we remember that notwithstanding the fact that we're all super stressed, we're all running the rat race, we've got a lot on our shoulders, can we take a deep breath, count to 10 and just be kind?
mm.
I think that's a good one right there.
I can imagine that philosophy, those four levels or four stages, phases, really working nicely as well within the leadership realm.
Yeah.
So you as the leader thinking about the greater good, feeling good about yourself
Yeah.
transfers then into how you deal with other people, of course, etc. So I can see it all playing out in a corporate or an entrepreneurial space as well. What does a normal day look like for you? Like how do you put
So
in your time and live that life?
that is so funny because you're the second person that's asked me that today. And you're the only two people in all of the interviews I've ever done that have ever asked me that question. Like nobody's ever asked me that question before. And I had somebody ask me not 2 hours ago the same question. I wake up very early. So I'm up between 4 and 4:30.
Wow.
Yeah, I wake up real, but I go to bed very early as well. And I think that again, when I was talking about, living in the desert, we normally will go with when the cooler you wake up, and then you go to bed, and then because the cooler hours are in the morning, the early morning.
Mm,
And we've been looking at now, we're still in April, and we've been looking at almost 98 Fahrenheit.
wow.
Yeah. So we're like, yeah. And that's the Sonoran Desert here in Phoenix, Arizona. So we've got that going for us here. But wake up very early, open up the house because I close it at night, but I open it up the house so that I can cool down a little bit because it's a little cooler. So as I said in the morning, go in and make my matcha latte, which is what I absolutely love. That's green tea. So that green tea is really good for, antioxidants. I start that. And then I'd usually jump and, right onto the computer with email and then courses or building, some of the classes that I'm pulling together. I'm pulling together another book. And I really am very, very keen about starting retreats for women
Mm,
where we will talk about the look good, feel good, be good, greater good concept.
I'm excited. So you mentioned the book. Is this
Oh, the new
is
book?
this yeah, is there a new book coming?
Yeah, I talk a lot about toxicity and living a
Right.
non-toxic life. And it's something that I absolutely adore. People say to me, Clarissa, what do you do for fun? Well, I go into the kitchen and I make yogurt. I go into the kitchen and I make cosmetics. I make creams. I make salves. I make lipsticks, chapsticks, toothpaste, mouthwash, laundry detergent. I make it all because I don't want to be buying as much plastic anymore.
Right.
I don't want to be bombarded with the chemicals anymore that are coming in through the door that I'm paying for at the supermarket that are
Yes.
really making us sick and sicker. So I've done a lot of research. It's really simple to do, by the way. You can just go on, YouTube and say how to make this and how to make that. I go onto Amazon, I order what I need as far as the butters and the oils, the essential oils, and the things that I need. And there's stuff out on my kitchen counter right now. I just made applesauce today so that I take the apples, I throw them in this, the cooker. Boom, within an hour and a half, I just blend it all up, and now I have absolutely clean applesauce that I can now eat straight from the apple. None of the stuff in the jar, none of this preservatives, none of that. I've also made 2 batches of yogurt, which is just the milk and the inoculating starter. That's it. And that's what I love to do. I've baked 3 or 4 cakes this week with called yogurt cake with the yogurt that I make. I could be here all day with the stuff that I love to do. But that is usually what my day is. It's about the book, the non-toxic philosophy under the look good, feel good, be good, and greater good concepts. So look good, we have, what are we putting on our skin? What are, all that, right? What are we, shampoo, all the things, making sure we get the toxic out. Feel good, same thing. That's diet, exercise, nutrition, and wellness. Get the toxins out. Be good is what we're thinking. Remember, I said leadership, finances, relationships. So this is perfect. The book is perfect for the be good concept.
Right.
And then the greater good concept is whatever you choose, however you decide you're going to be a better person tomorrow than you are today, and who you're going to affect by doing that.
It sounds like you're a very creative, innovative person. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
how much would you say that curiosity plays a part in your life? Are you a curious person?
Absolutely. I mean, well, I'm curious about the things I care about. If you were to say to me, Clarissa, let's sit down and talk about rocket science, we're not going to have a long conversation because I don't know that much about it, or how to split the DNA. I don't know all that. I don't know. I'm not very scientific in that way. As I said, I'm really right-brained, which is really more the creative.
Right.
And so um, I'd like to say I'm whole-brained, but I think I'm really right-brained. And that's, it's really the never-ending curiosity. If there's a word I get every day, I get 3 to 4 newsletters that are from dictionaries, the
Okay.
Collins Dictionary, the Webster Dictionary, and every day I learn a new word. And if there's ever a word I don't know, I stop immediately and look it up.
Mm. How long have you practiced that?
Oh, I've been doing that for years. I was very good at English in school. I used to be there used to be the spelling bee in school. And it was called the Parker Pen spelling bee. And if you won that spelling bee, you won the pen. I
Right.
won the pen every year because I was really strong in spelling. I was very good at English. But you know, don't take me into algebra or trigonometry because I would fall apart. It just wasn't. So that's why I said I was really strong in some things and not so strong in others. And yeah, that's okay. I guess that's okay.
You've become very focused on empowering women, and maybe
Yeah.
that's a wrong statement, but it seems like a lot of what you do today is around empowering women. In the
Yeah.
limelight is really about elevating women entrepreneurs globally, if I
Yeah.
understand correctly. Right.
That's how it was. Yeah. That's how In Alignment was born. It was so that they would be able to promote either, through me, through an interview with me, which means they would be on Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, and a whole bunch of other, online digital platforms. The platform for the podcast, which we were on 15 different podcast platforms, and then the digital magazine that I would come up out with every 3 months.
Mm.
And this was a way for the women, right, to come in and promote themselves, whether they wanted to write for the magazine. Everybody got their interview, and then after that, I pivoted just a little bit into also a mastermind for some of the women that wanted to get together every 2 weeks. So creating that
Right.
community so that they would be able to get a little more of me and certainly more of themselves. And it was a very interesting because it started out as a business, is only a business platform and business mastermind. But as women do, and we get to know each other very quickly. I think, I could be on a plane from California to New York and sit next to a woman and know her entire life story in those 5 hours, her entire life story. And we're best friends and we're calling each other the week after that. That's how women are. And so some of these times I was on the mastermind, the women were coming on and they were having personal problems. And so they said, listen, I don't have anything really to talk about business this week, but can I just say, yeah, of course you can say whatever you want. My son tried to commit suicide this week.
Right.
My husband has stage 3 or 4 prostate cancer. And so it started to morph into what one of the women called, Clarissa, you've created for us a safe space, right? Where we could talk about it. So if a personal problem came up, we all put our business things aside because we come with business questions, right? And we would focus in on her for basically the rest of the mastermind time and give her tips, advice, resources, a hug, and a lot of them would call each other afterwards. So it was a place for women to come to and find one another and find, good friendships as well. So
Mm.
I was very proud of that moment. And again, it was a leadership moment that in that moment I had to decide, listen, you're having a personal problem, I'll call you after the mastermind.
Right.
Or I decided it might be best that we all kind of, the 20 of us, 19 of us came in and sort of loved on her
Mm.
so that she felt really like she had some real power behind her, shoulders, and everybody had her back. And it was one of the best things that I could do because I also, with the 12 weeks of the mastermind, came the 12 weeks, the 12 chapters of my book. So
Okay.
yeah, it was really cool. Very cool.
And even though it's not directly business related, the impact flows through to business anyway. And
It
this
does
this
absolutely, because you are only as good on your business during your business hours as you are in your personal life. I
yeah,
wholeheartedly believe that. It's for me at least, it's almost impossible to leave my personal problems at the door when when I walk, let's say, into the office or into my my work. It's really difficult. It
yeah.
can be very, very difficult. I mean, yes, can it be done? Of course. But in the back of your mind, you know you're either having a really great day because your personal life is on point, or
Yeah.
you're lagging a little bit because you're having some problems at home or your health isn't good, or for the different reasons that that can be. So
And I think that's a great message for leaders to be aware of as well. We're all so focused on engagement, and we're trying
yeah,
to beat the drum to get everyone engaged, but then we forget about we have a life, and there could be issues outside of the 9 to 5 or whatever
yeah,
the time they're in the business that
yeah.
we overlook. And unless we are aware of that, we miss tremendous opportunities
Yeah.
as well to
I
really.
think that some of the best leaders are also very empathic.
Mm,
When they need to be and not for too long, because I definitely think that you know um you don't need to be coddling too
mm,
much, right? But maybe, and I use this term, loosely, but I like to say a little less coddling and a little more cuddling, right? So stop fixing everything for them, but sometimes they just need a hug. And then
yeah.
send them back and let them work out their own, but be empathetic as well. I think it's important, because the pressure builds up. I think sometimes, and people really becomes like a pressure cooker, and that's not good for anybody. Not good for their health. It's not good for the health of the company. It's not good for your health. It's not good for the outcome
Mm.
of whatever it is going on, whatever you're working on.
To that point, you talk a lot about resilience, directly or indirectly, through the conversations. I, I, I see failure as part of life. I mean, we experience it progressively.
Yeah.
People deal with it very differently, of course, but resilience is one of the key foundations for me, at least. How do you see that perspective, or what's your perspective around that?
I think resilience is real. Yeah, tenacity, resilience. I think they're really two super important words when it comes to. But I think another word that I like to use in the whole, especially in the whole self-esteem sphere, and obviously for leaders, is the
Mm,
courage that it takes. Because we can talk about the extra mile, as much as we want. But the funny part of the extra mile is there are really very few people on it with you. Like you can go the extra mile and you got up to that extra and you turn around and you think you're with a group of people and all of a sudden you're standing alone and you've got one more mile to go because that's your extra mile. And that extra mile is cold and it's blustery and it's dark and there's probably wolves hiding behind the trees and there's a little teeny tiny white light all the way down there. You think you see it, but you're not sure because it's like raining real hard in your eyes. And so you get this, like, that last mile is really a tough go. And
mm,
so that's where, yeah, you need the resilience, you need the tenacity, you need the discipline, but you really need the courage to say, I can do this. I know it's cold, I know it's rainy, and I know I don't care about the wolves. I'm just going. And if I encounter a wolf, I'll deal with it when I get there. I'm going. Because every step that you take, the light at the end of the tunnel gets bigger, bolder, brighter, and more beautiful. So why not?
mm.
Why not? I see no reason why that extra mile shouldn't be the most glorious of them all.
To that point, is there a period in your career where that was a real life situation where you're very proud of that situation because you pushed yourself that extra mile?
Um, Gosh, it's a really great question. I know I pretty much have had a lot of courage in pretty much everything I've had to do. As I had kind of explained before, is there one that I think let me think a minute. Um, I think some of the most courageous times were the times that I was keynoting on stage, probably. That's always it's a scary moment. And again, I'm used to microphones, television, stages. I'm used to all of that. But when you're keynoting on stage, it's about what you want the audience to take obviously away from it, but it's usually your personal life experience, and you don't want ever kind of be boring or redundant or oh ho hum, we've heard this all before.
Right.
Because, self-esteem and personal development, a lot of people think that, it's, whatever, it's okay, it's fine, And they call it what they call soft skills. Those are the
Right.
soft skills. But may I remind you that the soft skills are also some of the hardest
Mm,
skills.
for sure.
It is not easy to take a deeper dive into yourself. It is not easy to take a look at yourself and do the work that needs to be done in order to be living in happier, healthier self-esteem, in order to garner the courage that you need to get through, and in order to be able to put an end to any toxic relationship you may have in your life. It's tough work. And so, the toxic relationships are the ones that are really some of the most difficult of all because, when you're cutting somebody off, or at least you're backing them off in a big way,
Mm,
uh, it's a hard thing to do because you may really love somebody a lot that you realize or recognize you're in a toxic relationship with, but that's not good for you. You could be
right.
with a narcissist, the whole thing, we'd be here all day, but or God forbid it should be, a domestic violence kind of situation. And women stay for fear, or they stay for the financial
Mm,
aspect, or not, get up, move on, and never look back is what I say. And there are definitely lots of tools and resources out there also for anyone that's being abused. But these are the kinds of things that you have to really have immense courage to get past. And you do, and you will, and it's all good. Um, but I think at the end of the day, it's always our responsibility. It's our responsibility to take a look at our emotional pain, and it's our responsibility to work on ourselves. And sometimes that might be, you might have to go to a professional, maybe books and courses and classes, and what it might not be enough. But whatever it means for you, and whatever you can do for yourself is what you should be doing. And again, you can either conform or you can transform. There's two ways out in life, That's as simple as that.
You certainly are a very inspirational person. I'm just sitting here listening and soaking it all in. You worked with a group of African women who somehow went on to win the Nobel Peace
Nobel
Prize.
Peace Prize, I know.
What's the
That was
story
another
behind
that was another pinch me moment, because no, I have to say, I was asked by the organization that was running a campaign. It was called Walking Africa, and it was the difficulty that many African women encounter by finding clean, fresh water, potable water, drinkable water. And so that was the basis of the campaign. And they asked me if I would help them. Again, remembering that I was, working on television. I was in Italy
it?
for many, many years. So the Italians, when I was here, they called me, "Will you help?" Absolutely. So, that was really what that was all about. And I pulled together as best as I could. This is even pre-Facebook. I mean, this is we're just about coming into Facebook, I think. It was 2001, if I remember, for 2001-ish.
Right.
And I wasn't really a lot on social media yet. Most of them hadn't come out. Anyway, long story short is, yeah, that was a deal. And I went to Brussels, and we were at European Parliament, and the women came in, and they were lovely and beautiful and colorful. And I did a speech for about women's empowerment there. And there were what I didn't know at the time was, we got closer to October when they were going to say who won and who didn't win. So I called the Italians. I said, "What do we know? What's the news?" And they said, "Clarissa, well, we won't know for another week because it will be they tell us on October 7th or whatever it was. But I just want you to know there are another 210 candidates this year
Wow.
for the Nobel Peace Prize." And, I have to say, it was probably the only time in my life, Wayne, where my heart didn't sink. I
Mhm.
went, "Okay, that's fine. We're good." Because I knew it was right. It was a perfect timing. And I just knew it was. So a week later, they called me and said that our gals won, the Nobel Peace Prize. And that was really cool. It was another one of my crowning moments. I didn't, I did what I could. I was the ambassador to the United States. But again, I did what I could. And it's been it's just a cool, cool thing. Very cool
Yeah,
thing.
very humble person. For many people, that would be an absolute pinnacle of their career.
Yeah, it was a cool thing. Just like, my two private audiences with Pope John Paul II were amazing. That was really cool. And when you talk about, leadership, for me, working on television and being dubbed, if you will, a celebrity because of the television coverage and as much as I was on it, it comes with some perks, and those are some of the
Mm,
perks. And so you take those perks and you do good with it, right?
for
That,
sure.
celebrity means nothing if you're not doing something good with it, right? So, there you go.
Yeah, we could talk for hours about different topics here, but you've mentioned, you became very engrossed in reading self-help books, etc. Did you have a specific mentor or coach at any stage during
I just, I went down with um Napoleon Hill was one of my very first ones. And it
Mm,
was, Think and Grow Rich series. And that, by the way, also became like a super billion-dollar industry because it's been translated into basically every language
yeah,
in the world. I read a lot of subconscious books, super consciousness books, a lot of shadow workbooks. I've got all kinds of books back there, and I've got 10 of them on the couch right there that every once in a while I'll stop and I'll pick up. Another thing that I started to do when I started to do the research for the book, there are two other doctors, two other books that I came across. And one is Dr. Elaine Aron, who's a PhD, and she came out with something called the extra sensitive person. And it's a thing. And about 30% of the world has this, what they call dis-ease, where they are extra sensitive to the stimuli.
mhm,
Okay, so we can go down you can go down all kinds of diverse situations here, and that's okay. It's great. It's a great book, and they even made a movie. It's on Netflix. It's all over the place. She's great. And the other book is a book by Rudy Simone called Aspergirls. So girls with Asperger's, right? And there's the whole spectrum and the whole nine yards. Well, as I was doing the research for the book, I read both of those books. I'll be darned if I didn't. And I'll tell you something about that, Wayne, and that is I found so much relief in these two books because I found myself in these books. I went down the Asperger's list and checked off every damn box.
gosh,
And it's funny because when we're looking at each other, talking to each other, interacting with each other, there are so many levels underneath, right? Who we're actually looking at and interacting with. The levels underneath are can be many. They can be vast. And so it was it was such a relief to me to read these books because in my lifetime I've been told that I was so difficult and such a pain and so bossy and so this and so that. And I always kind of thought I was a delightful little person, but I guess a lot of people didn't think that I was. And the idea that there were actual and absolute reasons that I was the way that I was. Apart the whole tribal family thing that you are, that they sort of thrust upon you in childhood. But the other things that might make you, that comprise you, that form you, right?
yes,
Reading is a very powerful thing, and that's another thing I say, continually educate yourself
right,
because we are always a work in progress. And the more you learn and the more you know, now I live a different existence because I'm not down on myself anymore. Like
mm,
people can be really cruel,
right,
but now I know why I'm the way I am, and it's cool. It's great. I
yeah.
love it because
So,
I was custom made, Wayne. I was custom made. I
come on, aren't we all? I know you talk in the book about your vision board. How big is vision and purpose in your life?
Yeah, I have two vision boards. One vision board is the physical vision board. The
Mhm,
thing, I want a Bentley and I want that villa and I want, the vision board. And I will tell you that many of those things have come true, not the Bentley yet. We're still working on that. But then I have a spiritual vision board, which is really, really very important too. So there are two different ways that I can take a look. I look at the physical in life, and then I look at the spiritual, which is life, but in a different way.
right,
Um, and so the vision boards are I think really important. And you can do those online, by the way. I talk about vision boards in the book, but you can do really good something called mindsmovies.com, and you can put it all in and it creates a video for you of all the
Right.
things you pull in the pictures you want, you pull in the sayings that you want. And if you watch that every day, that's another thing that's pretty powerful as far as what it's like a reticular activating process, or
Yeah.
it's the reminder that the vision board, if you continually remind yourself, right? It's the repetitive, right? That whole repetitive
Yes.
process. It's amazing, amazing what will happen in your life. Like the things that will actually happen that you want to happen. It's like, wow, okay, this stuff really works.
Final question, because we're out of time, but just to close off the conversation, Dane, you were awarded the title of Dane. How did this come about?
Well, I was nominated. It's the Sovereign and Royal Order of Cappadocia, Constantine the Great, and Saint Helen. Saint Helen is Constantine the Great's mother, and Cappadocia is in Turkey. And so, as many of the royal orders will have it, there are many offshoots, right, from royal orders, and especially in Europe. And so, I was nominated to this royal order. The prince obviously he lives in Spain, but he obviously has to go through it. And okay, everyone. And so, I was given a royal title. I think it was 5 years ago. 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago in Las Vegas. Everybody went up to Las Vegas. It wasn't far from me because I could drive up. And the prince came in and he knighted us with the thing. And I've got a cape and I've got the scepter and I got a whole thing. And it was lovely. It was a lovely recognition. It hasn't changed my life in any way. But because it was a title that was bestowed upon me, I use it in my signature, in my email, and in my social media. But outside of that, I mean, you don't have to say, "Hey, Dame," you don't have to curtsy when I walk in the room. None of that.
And did
None
it
of
move
that.
you quickly? They have the sword and they actually touch your shoulders
Yes.
with the sword?
Oh yeah. Yeah,
I
yeah.
thought that was just the movies. Okay. So,
No, no, no. It's a thing. It's a real thing. The guys get a sword. The guys get a sword. The women get a scepter, and then you are knighted with the sword. The prince does the thing. It's very nice. It's a lovely group of people, and it was an extraordinary honor. Let's put it that way.
you've had a fantastic career by many people's standards, probably your own as well, and definitely mine. Any final word or piece of advice for our listeners
I
about?
think, yeah, yeah. Sorry to interrupt you, but here's what comes to mind right away, and that is, um, walk away from this wanting to be a better person more than you are today. That's my mantra. I said it before. Don't be a jerk. Be a nice person. I think that's always like it really should always be top of mind. What would be the right thing to do? What is the honorable thing to do? I think honorable is a word that we'll kind of let go by the wayside, kind of like with manners, having good manners. Honorable is what is the honorable thing to do? Um, Loyalty, being loyal. Loyalty is when I have your back behind your back.
Right.
Loyalty is when I have your back behind your back. Be loyal. Be loyal in your actions, be loyal in your words.
Mhm.
And I know that for a lot of people, this is like, oh, what the heck? That's too much work. But yeah, but I will tell you that when you walk in life with honor, and you are loyal, and you are doing the right thing, and you are saying the right things, and you're really beating from the heart. And look, I'm human. I don't always get it right either, but I do aim to always get it right.
Mm.
And I think that's the least that, that's the least that we as human beings can ask of ourselves.
Yeah, great advice. Thank you for that. Anywhere that people can follow you or connect with you, if you would like people to connect
Of
with you,
course,
what's
yeah.
the best
I'm on
approach?
all the social media. I'm not on Snapchat, but just Clarissa Burt, Burt. And then the book is just on Amazon, basically. I think you're in Australia, right?
Well, I'm Australian. I'm in Shanghai, but
Shanghai,
otherwise,
that's right. You're in China.
yeah,
I'm pretty sure it's in English, but I'm pretty sure it's on Amazon there as well.
yeah, yeah, it is. Very good. Well, great connecting.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking the
Thanks,
time
Wayne.
out. and all the best for everything you have planned for the future, I'm sure.
Thank you so kindly. Thank you so much.
So what are you waiting for? Hit the subscribe button below and click on the bell icon so I can pop up in your feed occasionally with a great tip for your ultimate growth.